afternoon, everyone. Today, welcome to the Friday seminars that we have been having very regularly. Today, we have with us Ms. Deepthi Bhatia. Ms. Bhatia is pursuing her PhD in Experimental Economics at the Graduate School of Decision Sciences, University of Constance. She is also affiliated with Thurgau Institute of Economics, Switzerland. I think I got the pronunciation right. Her research interests include studying human behavior through lab and field experiments. So she is working on two things: how responsibility is attributed in group decisions, and on identity-based discrimination in labor market. She's also worked as a researcher at RIS and as a project mentor at Ashoka University, Sonipat. Now, today I think she'll be talking about the identity-based discrimination in labor market. I think maybe I'll tell a few things maybe about that before you start. Maybe this is so two broad theories have been there of discrimination, which Ms. Bhatia will explain more. But I think it is about the taste-based discrimination and statistical discrimination. I think what Ms. Bhatia has done in her work is to experimentally look at what kind of discrimination exists uh, using a lab in the field kind of experiments. So these are like reasonably contentious issues and very important issues because economic theory or rational choice theory has struggled to come up with a proper understanding of why ever does discrimination happen. And these two theories have been there for a while, but there have been few studies on experimentally validating these theories. I think Ms. Bhatia's is an important contribution in that regard, and we look forward to hearing from you, Ms. Bhatia. The floor is yours. Yeah.
Thank you for the kind words. I'll just share my screen now. Can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so today I'll talk about my second project from my PhD thesis, and it's on caste and unequal access to education. It's a joint project with my supervisor, Urs Fischbacher, who's at the University of Constance, and Ankush Shastri, who's a postdoc at the University of Constance. So I'll just give a brief introduction about caste system. So I think the audience is pretty well versed with the caste system in India. But this is like the first time I'm presenting to the Indian audience. So I think I'll be a bit quick with the introduction on the caste. So the caste system is believed to be originated around 3,000 years ago. And basically what the caste system did was it uh, divided the society into mutually exclusive groups based on occupational segregation. And it can be seen till date in the last name. So people can infer your caste based on your last name. And despite being social in nature, it is found to affect a large number of economic decisions. So for instance, migration decisions, labor market decisions, and so on. So after the independence of India, the caste system was formally abolished, and the government had introduced affirmative action policies in order to benefit the historically disadvantaged castes, and therefore introduced a reservation system based on the following categories, which were general, OBC, SC, and STs. So the disadvantaged castes, or so to say, the categories in the affirmative action framework, got reservations in higher public educational institutes as well as government jobs. So this is what you see in the figure is just our population statistics based on our census 2011 and how caste-based reservation share is in the higher educational institutes. So moving on to the motivation for this study is that discrimination in the labor market has been studied for various minorities. So based on gender, based on your color, race, identity. But what basically is in the economic literature is like there are two basic models which have this theory, and like in statistical discrimination, it is basically that if an employer does not have complete information about the potential employees, he tries to infer their ability based on the group characteristics of the individual. And the task discrimination model is that an employer can have a certain disutility or dislike for certain individuals or certain minorities, and this can therefore affect their hiring or promotions as well. So also now recently in the discrimination theory, we have models with respect to expectation-based discrimination. What do I mean by that? So expectation-based discrimination is based on the biased perception that individuals might have. So for instance, you might say, or people might believe that women are worse drivers than men, although there is no statistical evidence behind it. So it's just the biased perception that's talking, and people discriminate based on that. So these are like now the three main models which we have in the economic literature, so to say, with respect to discrimination. And with respect to caste, we see in the labor market that upper castes have a highest share in the white collar jobs, and as well as in the private sector where the affirmative action policies are not mandatory. 93% of the top jobs are held by the upper caste people. So non-upper castes, on the other hand, have a more than proportionate share engaged in low-paying casual labor, and this kind of makes it important then to study labor market discrimination based on your caste identity. So our work is basically related to three strands of discrimination literature, which is status-based discrimination. Status-based discrimination with respect to caste would be that people often believe that upper caste people are more able, or they have a higher ability than non-upper caste people, and this can lead to a discrimination based on status. So employers or people in general can kind of prefer hiring the upper caste people based on this status of higher ability. In-group favoritism is when you prefer members from your own group in hiring, promotions, or whatever, even interaction. So in-group favoritism is basically that. And belief updating would be the third strand that we touch upon. And in that, one is based on employer learning. So how do employers learn over time? Do they update their beliefs over time about minorities or not? And discrimination due to conservatism in updating beliefs, which is that if employers do not update their beliefs about minority and majority and their performance or ability, then this can lead to a persistent discrimination in the society. So our paper is basically closely touches upon these two papers in the literature, and we see how employers learn over time, or if they do not learn and do not update their beliefs, does this lead to a discrimination in the labor market based on identity or not? So our contribution to the literature, as I said on the previous slide, is basically to the discrimination literature. So we study the existence of discrimination in the presence as well as in the absence of information about inequality of opportunity. Inequality of opportunity in our case is unequal access to education. And the second would be on employer learning and belief updating, which is we explore how employers learn and update their beliefs over time in the environment where you have unequal access to education, so unequal opportunities in general. So my research question is basically, how do employers evaluate employees in the presence of information on group belonging, which is caste identity in our case, access to education. So access to education is prior learning of a given task. I'll explain more about this in a minute, and about individual performance. The next would be, how do employers, if employers use unequal access to education as an excuse for caste-based discrimination, and how does the presence of information about inequality of opportunity affect discrimination based on favoritism towards a high status group and towards own group, so if they favor their own caste or not. And the last would be, do employers update their beliefs? If not, does the lack of updating lead to a persistent discrimination in the labor market as well as in the society? So we use a lab experiment to answer the following questions, and we have the following experimental design. So in the lab experiment, there are students who play the role of either an employee or an employer. So the employees learn and solve a general knowledge quiz questions, and the employers are then, so if you're an employer, you're assigned a group of 12 employees, and you have to, so in each round, so you are shown like a pair of employees, and you have to select one employee whom you think is a better performer. So basically, this is the framework that we have in the experiment. Now moving on to the details. So for the employees are subjects or participants from upper caste and non-upper caste. And in the learning phase, so they initially have a learning phase. They learn answers to 60 general knowledge quiz questions, which are randomly drawn for everyone. And they learn the answer to these in 15 minutes. And these are questions from all all diverse subjects. So it's not specific to one subject. So it's general knowledge quiz questions with various field subject questions. And then once they have learned these 60 questions, they have a quiz phase where they answer the 60 questions that they had learned earlier, and they have 60 new questions which they hadn't learned earlier. So in total they answer 120 questions, and the time duration they get to answer this was 30 minutes. So just to give an example of what kind of questions they had really difficult questions like this one. So we deliberately chose difficult questions so that learning helps. So if it would be really easy questions, learning wouldn't have helped because they would have already known these questions. So irrespective of whether they had this learning phase or not, they would have been able to answer it in the quiz phase. So this is just an example to show that they were really difficult questions which people didn't know. Okay, so with respect to employers, suppose you're an employer here, you were assigned 12 employees so these employees were from the first phase of the experiment. You were assigned these 12 employees, and out of these 12 employees, so you see 6 employees were from the general category, 3 employees were from the OBC category, 2 were from the scheduled caste category, and 1 was from the scheduled tribe category. Why did we do this? We did this so that it's in line with the reservation share that we had at the university. So it was also kind of representative of the population that we had, because we did this at a premier engineering institute in Gujarat. So this was kind of representative of the population that we had at that institute. Now, out of these 6 employees that you see here from the general category, 3 employees were randomly educated. And out of these 2 OBC employees, 1 was randomly chosen to be educated, Out of these two, so one SC and one OBC, one was randomly chosen to be educated, and so on and so forth for the ST and SC as well. And we did this so that every caste had an equal opportunity, every caste member had an equal opportunity to be educated. So what do I mean by education now in the experiment? Now that we have talked a lot about it, what do I actually mean by education? Now, access to education means which questions are relevant for calculating the performance of the employees. Because in the experiment, we show the performance of the employees to the employers. So the access to education is therefore relevant in choosing the questions that are relevant for calculating the performance. And the performance is calculated for 8 questions. So remember, they answered 120 questions in total, and we calculate the performance on randomly drawn 8 questions. But how do we draw these 8 questions is important. So suppose an employee is educated. So for him, we pick up 5 questions from the learning phase. So he had learned already these questions and then answered. And we pick up 3 questions which were new to him. So 3 questions he hadn't learned and then had answered it. So they were new. And on the other hand, if an employee is not educated, then we picked up 7 questions from the questions which were new to him and he had answered, and 1 question from the learning phase. So he had learned this question and he had answered it subsequently in the GK quiz. So this is how we pick up the questions with respect to access to education. And here you see this guy is more educated, or like he has access to education in that sense, and this person does not have access to education or low access to education. So we had 2 treatments. One was the caste and education information treatment, where you had where the employers had information on caste, education, as well as performance. And we had a caste info treatment where you just had information on caste and performance. So here you did not have information about education. So let's see how the sample screens looked like for both the treatments. So here what you see is each employer had 12 assigned employees. So 6 belong to upper caste, 6 belongs to non-upper caste. And for the caste and education treatment, this is how your screen looked like. So you had the category information, you had how many questions this person had from the learned questions, and then you had the performance information. So how he performed out of 8 questions. So this is out of 8, the performance. And in the caste treatment, you had just the caste and the performance. So the learned questions, or so to say, the access to education information was not present in this treatment. Now, the important thing is that after each round, so if you're an employer, you see this screen, you choose one of the person whom you think is a better performer in a randomly chosen unlearned question, sorry. And then you see this feedback screen, that whether your answer was correct or not, and whether you gain a point or not. So this was incentivized in that sense. So people kind of gain money for each point that they gain in the end of the experiment. So how was the better performer determined? So the employer had to choose an employee who's more likely to perform better in the unlearned questions. So these questions were new to him, and like, how did the employee perform in that? You had to kind of assess that. So which questions were chosen now? So unlearned questions were chosen in such a manner that only one of the employees had answered it correctly. So there was no draw in that sense. So it wasn't like that both of them were equally capable, or it was randomly then decided by the computer. So it was, the questions were chosen in such a manner that only one of them had answered it correctly. And these questions were picked randomly, but with replacement. So we see here that the evaluation of the better performer by the employers can be a proxy for hiring decision. So if you think, okay, this person is a better performer according to me, we take that as a proxy for hiring that particular person. Now, the experiment, as I said before, was conducted in Gujarat at a premier engineering institute. And this on the right, you just see a picture of the lab experiment in progress. Now, just to have an overview, the employees learn and solve a GK quiz questions, and this was incentivized. So they gained 1 point, which was I think around 5 rupees per question. So they gained 1 point for answering the question correctly. So it was incentivized. And the learning phase had 60 questions, in which they learned the answers. And then they had the GK quiz question phase subsequently, where they had 120 questions and they answered them. So here you had learned questions as well as unlearned questions. So there were 103 participants who did this employee role. And on the other hand, for the employers, they had to choose a better performer in every round. And we had 2 treatments. So the caste and education treatment, we had 104 subjects, and the caste info treatment where we had 41 subjects. And the number of rounds for the employers were 30. So in 30 rounds, they repeatedly take this decision. After each round, they get feedback whether their guess was correct or not, and whether they gain a point or not. And the number of participants for the employers in total was 188. So the total participants in all were 248. So yeah, it's just to provide a brief overview of the experiment. And now moving on to the hypothesis. So what we expected was that with respect to status-based discrimination, because we have this general belief, also in the literature, it's quite, I guess, evident that upper castes are believed to have a higher ability than non-upper castes. Irrespective of whether it's true or not, people have this belief, and therefore they take their decisions, or even like in surveys, they would prefer them. So from this, what we expected was that upper caste employees would have a higher probability to be selected, and this advantage would be higher in the caste treatment. So in the treatment where employers did not have information about access to education, and than the treatment, the caste and education treatment, where they had information about access to education. The second hypothesis that we had was that employers are more likely to select employees belonging to their own caste than the other caste. So it's in group favoritism, you favor your own caste when you have to hire someone. And the third one would be belief updating. So we expected that employers learn the performance distribution of employees over time and evaluate the employees accordingly. So because you get this feedback after every round, that whether your guess was right or not, you learn how these castes perform over time, and then you should kind of adjust your decisions or your evaluations accordingly. So just to give a brief overview of the caste composition of the participants, we had with respect to the employees, we had 48% belonging to the upper castes and 52% to the non-upper castes. With respect to the employers in the caste and education treatment, we had 58% belonging to the upper caste and the rest to the non-upper caste. And similarly, in the caste info treatment, we had 53% belonging to the upper caste. So this is just to kind of show that it was we made sure, or at least tried, that it should be representative of the population that's there at the educational institute. So we shouldn't have numbers which are at the one extreme. So now moving on to the results, we find that with respect to the employees, that the upper caste employees performed better than the non-upper caste employees. And this was true for both the learned questions as well as the questions which were not learned. So as you see here, that the non-learned questions had like a really low probability of being answered. So which shows that these were really difficult questions. And this was, again, as I said, important so that education would make a difference. So if you had a question which was learned already and you had answered, then this would definitely be beneficial than if a candidate did not have this learning opportunity. So here we see that the performance for both the upper caste and non-upper caste was, I think, slightly different, but the difference is still significant. So it's not like a huge difference, but yeah. So with respect to the employers now, do employers discriminate based on caste was the first question that we were looking to answer. And what we see here is the probability of upper caste being selected in a round. And if we just see, if we focus on the caste treatment where you did not have the education information, you see that this is not significantly different from 0.5. So people did not discriminate based on caste in the both the caste treatment as well as in the caste and education treatment. So the result that we have that employers do not discriminate based on the caste of employees in this case. Now, moving on to if employers favor their own caste employees, we again see that they did not favor their, so even after controlling for the caste of employers, so if they belong to an upper caste or a non-upper caste, we see that they did not favor their own caste. So the probability of upper caste being selected is not higher than 0.5. So we see that employers do not show in-group favoritism, and the likelihood of selecting employees of their own caste is not higher than choosing the other caste. Now, what do I mean by ambiguity of information in the caste and education treatment here is that suppose that you were educated. So you had 5 questions picked up from the learned questions and 3 from the unlearned questions. And then your performance was determined out of 8 questions. So suppose you favor upper caste and this upper caste had 6 questions. So his performance was 6 out of 8, and there is a non-upper caste employee who was not educated, and therefore his performance is 3 out of 8. Now, if you really want to discriminate, you can think that it's okay, and if you prefer, suppose, upper caste, you can say, okay, irrespective of whether he was educated, I don't care, his performance was higher, so you choose him. So by ambiguity of information, what we mean is that the performance is higher, but this can be due to the access to education. So it depends on the employer now whether he discounts for it or not. So if he really wants to discriminate, he might not discount for it because you can't really assess the true ability of the employees in the case that you have this education. So you can't really say whether the performance was due to the education because he had these learned questions and he had answered it, or is it due to his pure ability that he had this performance. So here what we do in ambiguity information is that we take all the cases where one employee was educated and the other was not, and this educated employee had a higher performance than the other employee who was not educated. And then we see whether employers discriminate based on it or not. So what you see here is, again, the probability of upper caste being selected, and we control for this, that the ambiguity of information, or like whether one employee was educated and his performance was higher, and do people discriminate then or not. So even after controlling for it, we see that people did not discriminate. So they correctly take into account this access to education information, and then they make their decisions or evaluate the employees accordingly. So the result that we have here is that ambiguity in education information did not lead to discrimination or in group favoritism based on the caste of employees. Moving on, now we see that overall we do not find any discrimination based on caste, but we then carefully looked at the first period in both the treatments where people had employees belonging to different castes and when they had the same performance. So if you have a employee belonging to a general category, one employee belonging to a OBC category, they have the same performance. Now, how do people decide or evaluate in this case? And what we find is in the caste treatment, where you did not have information about education, people do discriminate and they favor their own caste. So you see here the probability of upper caste being selected is quite high. It's close to 0.7 here in the first round, where you had these two employees who belonging to different castes with the same performance. So they choose their own caste more often here. Similarly, for the non-upper castes also have a higher probability of choosing their own caste. So here what you see is that the probability that they choose the upper caste employee in the first round is quite low. So it's close to, I think, 0.3 or something. So this is what we see in the caste treatment. In the caste and education treatment, on the other hand, when you had the different caste employees in the first round, they had the same education, they had the same performance, they still did not discriminate based on caste. So this was quite surprising for us because we expected that they would, in these cases, they would discriminate based on caste and at least choose their own caste in this way. But people did not discriminate when they had all the information here in this treatment. So we have the following result then, that employers favored their own caste employees in the first round in the caste treatment, but in the caste and education treatment, this in-group bias was not present. Moving on, how do employers learn over time? So we looked at the following model in this case. So what we do here is, so the dependent variable here again is upper caste being selected or not. So the probability that the upper caste was selected is equal to 1 or 0 if the non-upper caste was selected. And what you see here is, what I mean by share of upper caste winners is that the share of upper caste better performers in the previous rounds as well as in the all past rounds. Now, what do I mean by this? So if you are an employer and in the previous rounds, you had the experience that the upper castes were performing better than the non-upper castes through the feedback that you get about your guess, whether your guess was right or not, as you get the feedback that the share of upper castes were better performing, then you adjust your belief and the probability that you choose the upper caste in the subsequent round increases. So this is what you see in the caste and education treatment as well as in the caste treatment. So, and on the other hand, when we looked at the previous round, so suppose in the previous round you had the feedback that the upper caste will perform better. So in the subsequent round, you should choose kind of upper caste or not. So what you see here is it's quite minuscule here and it's not even significant. But so overall, what people do is they kind of base their decision based on the aggregate history. So in all the previous rounds, how people had performed and their experience out of it, and they base their decisions or evaluate employees accordingly. So this is what you see here, that people learn the performance distribution of the caste groups over time, and then they base their decision to choose who would be the better performer accordingly. So in a way, they statistically discriminate then. So in both the caste and education treatment, employers learn the performance distribution of upper caste and non-upper caste employees over time, and consequently, they tend to statistically discriminate in favor of upper caste employees over time. So over time, they learn that as the share of upper caste better performers increases, the probability of choosing an upper caste also increases. So as in the employee stage, we already saw that the upper caste had performed better than the non-upper caste. They tend to learn this information, and then they tend to statistically discriminate based on it. So to conclude now, as far as the employee performance goes, we find significant differences in the performance of upper caste versus non-upper caste employees. The upper caste had performed better in our case than the non-upper caste employees with respect to the employers. Overall, we do not find any significant evidence for caste-based discrimination in both the treatments, but we find that employers do exhibit initial discrimination based on prejudice in favor of in-group in the caste treatment. The employers learn the performance distribution of employees over time, and their decisions were partly based on their experience gained in the experiment. So the findings do point towards the statistical discrimination in favor of the upper caste employees. And now coming on to the possible reasons for this result. So as we did this in a government institute, they were young students, so it can be like the reason behind lack of finding this caste-based discrimination can be that these were young students who were staying in hostels, and they interacted with students belonging to different caste groups regularly. So they started with them, they ate with them. So this can be a potential reason why we do not find discrimination. And the second reason can be that the employers found the task too difficult. So it was somewhat difficult for them to choose an employee or who would perform better in a randomly chosen unlearned question. But we did make the task difficult deliberately so that it gives them an environment to discriminate easily. So it would have been quite easy for them to kind of discriminate, or like have, if they already have a stereotype in their mind, they can base their decision on that. So yeah, that can be a potential reason, but yeah, it was kind of designed in this way that it should be difficult for the employers to, yeah, but easy to discriminate in that way. Yeah. But I guess, yeah, it's still good news for India that young and educated people are caring less and less about caste and not discriminating on it. So we are not claiming that there's no discrimination. We are just saying that in this particular study, we did not find it. And yeah, there can be a lot of reasons behind it. So yeah, I'll just end here. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to your feedback.
Thank you, Deepti, for that presentation. Sure, people questions. Yeah. Anybody has any questions, you can ask. I think we have time for question and answers. Comments. So welcome.
I think to break the silence, I will ask something. Deepti, is Vinod here.
Hi, guys. Hello, sir.
Yeah, happy to see you.
Same here.
So I just want to ask one or two things towards what you had said in the end. I mean, while you seem to be apologetic about the fact that you were not able to find discrimination in the group, so and you were searching for reasons. Was it necessary that do you actually believe that there is discrimination, and your experiment was not able to capture that? Okay, so if you really believe that there is discrimination and then your experiment was not able to capture it, then there is a problem over there, right? So I can't say it's a problem of I mean, because the way in which you are apologetic about it, it sounds as if you were not able to catch. So it's a problem with is it a problem of the experiment, or is it that there is no discrimination? That is well, that's one of the questions. And second thing is that you also said this thing that you're happy that the younger people are less discriminating compared to in comparison to the older people should be, right? That should be the comparison group, right? But what I understand is that the caste practices also, it actually grows over time. It is not about being the new generation in India. The new generation, when becomes old, maybe after a few years down the line, they also would tend to learn this practice. So as young children, they probably mix a lot, but after when they grow up and then start moving up in time, probably their beliefs get strengthened, and that's what it shows in your data also, that the learning goes on over a period of time. There is learning going on, and discrimination becomes much more evident as they learn more about this thing. So that's the same thing. Can you expect the same thing in this thing? So I'll just these are just opening questions. If I'll get a chance, I'll ask later on also. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your question, sir. Yeah, the first question is, I'm not kind of apologetic, but like I would rather say I'm more careful about saying that because we do not find discrimination, we can't really say that discrimination does not exist at all in India based on caste. So there have been studies, various correspondence and audit studies, which find that there is discrimination based on caste, but particularly to our study where they have this information about unequal access to education, then people do not tend to discriminate. So I would rather say that if employers have this complete information, which is again difficult in the labor market, especially if they have this information that, okay, this guy had like inequality of opportunity, and therefore the employer should discount on that and then base his decision to hire or promote somebody, yeah, then in that case, there should be no discrimination or really low levels of discrimination. So I would say, yeah, our study kind of captures the lower bound, that what would happen if this kind of information is provided to the employers, and then they should kind of not discriminate. So yeah, it's kind of, you can kind of, so if I kind of think of an example now in the labor market, if you have two employees and one employee had like a really difficult financial background with little money, and then he studied and scored suppose 80 marks, and the other one had really all the facilities, all the tuition facilities, and then he scored 85, then as an employer, you should discount for the fact that the guy who had 80 marks, he had like a really difficult background and still he managed to do that. So as an employer, you should kind of choose him. If you now want to discriminate based on ability or whatever, you can choose the other one who had a higher performance. But in this case, you should kind of discount for this fact. But how often do we see this information being, even taken into consideration by the employers? So it's basically the stereotypes, or if you have a preference for a certain caste, then you would kind of go for that. So yeah, I think that would be my answer to the first question. And for the second question, what was it again, sir? I think I kind of...
Yeah, so I was asking that
Yeah.
You ended up by saying, and towards the end you said that the young children or the younger ones are less discriminated.
Yeah. So yeah, what we find in the experiment is that people kind of statistically discriminate over time. So, but if you look at it in a rational context, it's rational to statistically discriminate, because as an employer, you would never had complete information about an employee. So if you then discriminate based on what you know about the average group characteristics of a certain group, so if you have an employee and you base your decision on that, then it's kind of rational because that's all the information that you had. So over time, so I think taste-based discrimination is kind of more critical to be addressed first. So if we kind of, because people interact with each other, and if we kind of achieve that in the future, there's no taste-based discrimination at all, but there's still statistical based discrimination. So statistical based discrimination is based on the fact that the upper caste had performed better than the non-upper caste even in our experiment. So in this case, when people did statistically discriminate over time, they kind of did the rational thing in the experiment because they had limited information, and on the limited information, when you have to evaluate the employee, that is, I think, the rational benchmark that they could have done. So, like in the real context, of course, like I would at least like to believe that people would not discriminate in the future based on caste, because it's just not, taste-based discrimination specifically is just not rational to do. So why would I choose someone from my caste in a company or a startup that I have if he does not perform well? And if I have the option of choosing an employee from the non-upper caste, so to say, who performs well. So it's a disutility also to the employer in the long run. If I have a certain employee who it belongs to my caste but does not perform well. So yeah, so over time, I guess people might discriminate more based on statistical discrimination than taste-based discrimination. So the younger generation, as long as they kind of interact with them, they should not discriminate based on taste.
Thank you.
But I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, in a way, but I think others should ask, and then if there is space, I'll come back again.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
The Santanu Ghosh has a question in the chat box. Within caste, can we not introduce another aspect with gender discrimination?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. And I guess from what I remember, there have been one study, I guess, I don't remember, it's a survey or something, where they find that non-upper caste women are the most discriminated against. So yeah, it would be kind of, as an extension, sure, it would be interesting to kind of have this. But yeah, it's so in our experiment, we did not want this interaction to come into play, because we thought, as it is, it's, I think, a lot that they kind of base their decision on. So if we add another layer, then it becomes difficult. So first we wanted to see if people discount the unequal access to education or not, and whether they discriminate based on caste or not. And if we have like another layer now, it becomes difficult to disentangle the effect. But yeah, sure, we can have it as an extension, like or another treatment where you just have this information. Yeah, no, thanks, that's a nice suggestion.
No, probably what he means is, did the employees have the information of gender of the, though they did not. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I meant, that if they had this information, then there is another layer that you can discriminate on. So you can either just discriminate based on gender, you can forget about caste, or there can be this interaction where you discriminate based on the gender as well as the caste of the employee.
Any other questions?
Hello.
Students?
Hello, that's Rahul.
Rahul, yeah, please.
Yeah. Hello. I'm really sorry I joined in the middle, so maybe what I'm about to ask was in the part of the presentation. So please pardon me. So as you told that the younger generation would not hire the people from their own caste, and it would be irrational for them, given that if they know that they would not perform better. But what if these younger generation are part of a government sector, and then they sit for hiring some other people? And given that the in government sector, this salary is fixed, the person that they hire won't affect their salary or their promotion. So whether in that case the younger generation would still discriminate. Am I clear?
Sorry, can you please, your voice was breaking. Can you please repeat the question?
Okay.
I got it in bits, sorry.
So I'm saying that you mentioned that a younger generation person would not discriminate in terms of hiring a person if that person, if he knows that even though that person is from his or her caste, is not efficient, because at the end it will affect his or her income. But let's say that younger generation is now employed in a government sector where his or her income is fixed. And that person now sits in an interview panel in hiring another person. So
Yeah.
in that case, that person being employed would not affect his or her income or even, let's say, the promotion. So in that case, whether that younger generation person can discriminate on caste?
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks for your question. Of course, I guess if it's at public institutes, we have these reservations already in place so that to ensure that there is kind of equal representation in that case. But yeah, if you have a certain taste or preference for a caste, then you can definitely discriminate in that case. And that's what happens in private what companies, so to say. So it's difficult to say even in private companies if as an employer you are a manager and you at least in some way the employee that you hire affects you. So if not in monetary terms, it affects in work terms. So if I hire an employee, I also have a fixed salary, be it government or be it private. And if the employee is not efficient, then it matters to you in the work terms.
Yes.
So but as you said, you can definitely still, if you have a certain taste, you can discriminate against a certain caste in that manner if you have a taste for it. But what we were exploring here was that if you have all this information, do people still kind of discriminate? So they could have favored their own caste in this case, where they had like people performing at the same level, and they just belong to different castes. So still they didn't discriminate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Yes, I have a question. Can I please ask?
Yeah, please,
Yes,
Ritika.
thank you, Deepti, for that interesting presentation. I just have one question, which is actually related to what Professor Vinod was also referring to. You know, you'd mentioned that in reality, when you try and reconcile the findings of your paper with that of reality, you said that in reality, if employers had more information about the respective employees, maybe discrimination would be lower. So just one thing that struck my mind was, how important do you think can names as an identity be? Is there really that much of information asymmetry that we're talking about in the real life when we're talking about caste-based discrimination? Because names itself would reveal a lot about it, right? So just wanted to ask your thoughts on it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I guess the last name says it all usually, and it then depends on the employer whether he wants to discriminate or not. But what we wanted to see, if they have this additional information about their access to or like their inequality of opportunity in life, then they can kind of discount it and then choose or evaluate the employees accordingly. So it's kind of, if employers want, they can infer this information from their CVs. So, but if you want to overlook it, then it's very easy to overlook it as well. So I think it's the information about these opportunities in life should be kind of become more salient in the CV, and then maybe employers can kind of discount for it and evaluate people accordingly. So yeah. But yeah, you are right. If it's in the name, if you just infer the caste and you want to discriminate based on that, you can totally do it. And that's what like some studies find, that when employers discriminate based on their taste for a certain caste. Yeah.
Hello. Yes, it's your last comment on the on your concluding slide was that hiring, difficulty of hiring. You think the difficulty of hiring might be one of the reasons why you're not finding discrimination. Is that right?
Sorry, what do you mean by difficulty exactly?
Can you go back to a concluding slide?
Yeah. This one?
Yeah, the employers found the task too difficult, and you think that might be the reason for not finding discrimination?
Yeah, so as I said, this can be one of the reasons that they did not discriminate based on caste, because they found the task too difficult. So they had to evaluate who was the better performer, and they found it too difficult from like the information they had to infer this. But we deliberately made the task difficult so that they have more opportunity, or to create an environment where they can easily discriminate. So when you have this tension going around about, okay, you don't really know who is the better performer or who would perform better, then it's easy to kind of base your decision. If you have a certain preference for a caste, or you have a stereotype in your mind, then it's easy to discriminate in these cases. But we did not find this.
So maybe is it because even though they had the caste information and education, so is it because there was some kind of a cognitive constraint on the employers that, yeah, so because they had to, I don't know, because they had to choose because choosing was difficult, they did not get time to discriminate or something like that is going on.
No, they had like sufficient time, so they could take any amount of. It was not for the employers. The time was not restricted, so they could take any amount of time they wanted to, but they just didn't discriminate. So they kind of correctly took this information of education or the lack of information. So that's what we find. They kind of learn over time, and then they base their decision, because they get this feedback after every round. So you learn, okay, this guy performed better or not. You learn about the certain castes, how they perform, so the performance distribution over time, and then you evaluate or you adjust your beliefs accordingly. So even if you initially had a certain belief about the performance of a upper caste or a non-upper caste, then over time, as you see, okay, this caste performs this way, this caste performs that way, you adjust your belief and then you evaluate accordingly.
Questions, comments?
Can I ask one more question? Vinod here. Yeah. Did you consider what type of employers? Suppose because this is an experiment, you would have certainly thought about employers producing what or providing what kind of products or services. Why I'm asking is this, because sometimes the discrimination is not from the employer, but the employer becomes a mediating factor from the customers. So you can have customers bringing in taste-based discrimination through the employers, and that will be reflecting on the employees, right? So when we say that statistical discrimination is the only source through which employers would discriminate, that actually does not remain fully with the employers. It is actually at least a part of the decision is with the customers. If you are especially where the industries where customer in where the employees meet the customers, right? So if the customers have certain tastes, okay, that taste would reflect upon the ability of the employer to employ what kind of employees you can employ, right? So in that context, I'm asking whether were you considering any of these things in the question that you had asked, or is it just flat employers as such in what's in this case?
Yeah, so in our study, it was just employers. So students had this role of employers, and we wanted to see how they would kind of make decisions. But yeah, I think you definitely have a really good point about these clients, and having a certain taste and preference is definitely applicable to, I think, the labor market. And in that case, I guess what we would find is that people who have a certain taste for caste, then it would be reflected in their decisions, so to say. Yeah. So if it's certain clients preferring interacting with upper caste, then you would definitely see the employers kind of hiring or kind of preferring the upper caste employees as better performers here. Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. But then again, it brings to the status-based discrimination or taste-based discrimination, based on what the clients expect. But we didn't have it here because the employers and the employees don't interact in our experiment. So we did not have it here. So here all they know is like whether the employee belonged to a certain caste or not. It was not even like the exact identity. Because of anonymity, we could not give them the exact identity. So the last name, so to say, in terms of identity is what I mean.
Okay, thanks.
The Santanu Ghosh has another question in the chat window. He says upper caste perform better. It means upper caste has higher productivity or efficiency. Yet if jobs are reserved for lower caste, then it leads to efficiency loss and GDP loss. If there is no reservation, then the gain from efficiency may be distributed to the lower caste as sort of compensation. Has this aspect been studied?
Yeah, I mean, it's the great caste debate, I would say, about efficiency. And I mean, I don't know, I wouldn't like to get too much into it because we do not look into it that way. But so what we find is that when upper caste perform better than non-upper caste, then it makes sense, or it's rational, at least in the experiment, to choose them for people. So when you evaluate who would be the better performer, it kind of natural for them to, when they have learned this information or the performance distribution over time, then it's natural for them to choose the upper caste. So it's not even a huge gap. So it's not like they like upper caste had a performance of 80 and non-upper caste had a performance of 60. It's not a big gap even in our experiment. So I don't know how it translates, how the performance translates in the real life, so to say, in the labor market. But if it's a big gap, then it's of course a huge efficiency difference.
I think I'll ask a few questions / comments before others have more questions. I think this thing, again, one of the confusions probably is that when you say the performance you are comparing across caste, can you control for some other observed characteristics of the people who responded, right? So it could be that then the effect of caste might not be there significant, or I don't know, maybe if you had taken that into account, then I'm sorry, that's just one of the clarifications I would need, right? So when you say
price, you mean? Sorry,
when you say when you say the performances, when you compare the performances, did you control for all the other factors, other observed factors at least, of the people who responded, right?
Yeah, so we had like from so they do this survey after doing the task, so the employers as well as the employees. So we controlled for the demographics, but I guess so the age and the place where they come from.
Yeah, because then the thing that you say that there might be unobserved characteristics which might matter. So we really don't know. That is one possibility, but that is one thing. The other thing is this selection. What were they selecting employees for? Like, were they given a particular role they had to look for, or what were they told, the employers?
So they were just told that you have to choose an employee whom you think is a better performer in the unlearned questions.
For a particular task, for any particular task, or did they have to look for some skills, or just that?
No, so they did this quiz phase already, the employees. So the employers were just asked, whom do you think is a better performer on the unlearned questions? So whom do you think perform better out of these two? So on every round, you had this screen where you had these two employees, you had this information, you had to choose one employee who, according to you, is a better performer in the unlearned questions that they had already performed. So it's just a proxy for hiring. So you would certainly hire a person who you think is more able. If I give you two people, you would certainly hire the one whom you think is more able.
Were there any returns to the employer which was based on the performance of the people he or she selected?
Yeah. So
Okay.
if he selected the one who was a better performer, then he gets 1 point. Yeah.
So anyways, on a related thing, Sabir has asked a question. He's asking, did you consider different types of employment? If not, what kind of employment was implied in the experiment? I think you pretty much answered the same question, I think. If you want to add something else, you can do.
Yeah, no, so it was just based on the task that they had in the experiment. So they answer these GK quiz questions, and then you just have to select whom do you think is a better performer on the unlearned questions. So the questions were new to everybody. It wasn't like it was known to someone or not. So these were new to all the employees. So it's just basically estimating who you think is a better performer.
In one of the phases, you found that there was in-group discrimination, right? In-group favoritism. Any reasons for why did you find? Because then later you concluded that there is no discrimination, but why would that be possibly then? There is nothing we get from that.
Yeah, so it's just the first round where there were different caste people. So the two employees were belong to the different caste. They had the same performance. And how did people choose in this way? In this particular caste treatment where they did not have the education information, they kind of favored their own caste. So this is just for one round that we found it. But over time, as they learn, they do not discriminate or do not favor their in-group. So overall, they do not discriminate. But in the first round, in the first instance, they do discriminate. And this is what can happen like in the labor market, because in the labor market, it's not always that you get a chance of repeated interaction. If it's usually just a one shot, you have two people, one belongs to the upper caste, one belongs to the non-upper caste. Now, whom do you choose? So it's in that, and in that case, people do have an in-group preference.
Okay, just one last question. I think that's it from my side. One is, see, one thing you mentioned is that it is about people thinking about productivity, then they will be unbiased. They are only doing statistical discrimination, right? And the other end, you say that if you provide education information, then people will be more considerate about people who may not be getting these higher performances, right? Don't they seem a bit contradictory where if you are focused on productivity, then whatever information you get, you will discredit it, right? You will finally say that I'm only concerned about productivity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then whatever information you give, that
Yeah.
so these two seem contradictory, but maybe I understood it wrong. So how does this work? Like, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, like in our experiment, the contradictory thing, so to say, is that education has kind of a negative connotation. So you should kind of discount education. If someone is educated, you should discount that and then consider his performance. But I think in reality, usually education has a more positive connotation, that if someone is kind of more educated, he's kind of considered more able or maybe more productive, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I think this is kind of this a bit contradictory, so to say, in the experiment, that you have to kind of discount for this negative connotation of, so superior education or superior performance might not be necessarily good here, because you need to kind of take into account the other factors that are might play a role in this higher performance. But also, I think in reality, if like I had this example before, if people have like different performances, you should also consider about other factors. So how many opportunities did the person get? How was the education background or the family background or the difficulties that the person might have faced to kind of reach this performance level? And if you kind discount for this now, then you should evaluate accordingly. So yeah.
yeah, but if finally you are concerned about efficiency, then you will say this is all fine, but the one who has got better marks is going to be more efficient, so I only choose that, right? Isn't that?
No, but even if you speak about efficiency, then like if I have 5 learned questions for someone, it's the probability is quite high that you answered it correctly in the subsequent round. So it's almost equal to 1, the probability that they answered the questions correctly. So if as an employer, I should discount for this fact, even if I'm considered about efficiency, I should take into account this fact and then see the performance. So discount for this fact, then calculate the performance of both of them, and then based on that, based on the net performance, I should kind of go for efficiency, so for higher performance in that case. Yeah.
One more question, but I'll wait for others to ask, otherwise I'm hijacking too much. Any other questions from the participants? Questions or comments?
Chaldu, can I ask? This is Nagaraj speaking.
Yes, sir, please.
No, sorry, honestly, it's all new to me. I'm familiar with the subject, but the caste is something which, in a larger sense, all of us are concerned with, and and I'm just trying to. My question may be very vague. That I'm sure you know about this whole Cisco example in the US. Which is a very popular case. Okay. So, and you talked about the efficiency issue. If somebody is purely bothered with efficiency, he should not, he should not bring in, should not discriminate on caste or something. But, that's what I would also think. I mean, that's what intuitively, this Cisco example, when I was reading, whatever little I came across, that really baffled me. In a most competitive industry, in such a place where Indian employers who know the caste system, they can read the surnames, and they systematically discriminated against the scheduled caste or the backward, whatever. That was the. So how does one reconcile this with the efficiency argument? And also, suppose say, how do you see? I mean, your experiment. Of course, your experiment may be a smaller one. To relate to this larger question about efficiency, equity trade-off. That's one broad question. It's not be very clear. Second question is, suppose say in your own experiment, we know that last name tells a lot. So suppose say you remove the last names, just give them random names or mix them up. Okay. Suppose you were to redo the exam, the experiment again. Okay. Would you think that could affect your results? Yeah, these are two.
Thank you, sir, for your questions. Yeah, for the second question, so we thought about how to provide the caste information a lot. So we were going really back and forth because first we wanted to provide the last names, but we were not sure how much can the younger generation now infer from the last names. So because someone from the north might not be able to tell from the surname the caste of someone belonging to the south. So that's why we provided them with this upper caste and non-upper caste classification. So SC, ST, OBC, general. But yeah, so alternatively, what can be done is that we can have certain last names. We can have a survey about who you think is a general category, SC, ST, OBC, and then people can kind of vote. And then we can use these names in the experiment, and then we can see whether people still discriminate based on caste. So in this case, you have to infer the caste from the surname. Yeah, I think it can be done in this way.
No, if you jumble up the last names, I don't know. I mean, if it is possible, maybe I'm not clear in the answer. And then see whether people,
okay.
You just jumble up the last names. Okay, you put,
okay,
and then do the experiment. And then I mean, maybe I've never done this kind of exercise, I don't know, but that's way to figure out how, because a lot of these are, very implicit. As soon as you see a name Chaturvedi, your mind, goes somewhere. I mean, because we have been, these are all, a lot of it is very socialization.
Yeah.
Okay. So therefore, I was just wondering whether is it possible to bring it in your experiment.
Yeah, I think what you mean is like kind of jumble up, like if the last surnames are now associated with higher performance, so non-upper caste surnames are with higher performance, or so to say. That's what you mean, right, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
So,
yeah, you don't, I mean, they say high performance guys have a lower caste names, I mean, surnames like that. So
yeah,
that
so yeah, some of these experiments were done earlier. I think the Banerjee papers tried to somewhat do this. So what they had was they had these fictitious resumes, so identical resumes, and then they like kind of had some surnames, some high caste surnames, some low caste surnames, and then they had sent it around to the real employers, so to say. And then I think they found little evidence for discrimination, but they still found something, I guess, some taste-based discrimination there. Yeah. So yeah, yeah. So for your second question, yeah, that can be done for sure, and we can it would be like on the lines of the Banerjee paper then, to see if people discriminate based on like the performance or just on the caste. And for the first question, what was the first question? Sorry.
yeah, about the Cisco, see
Yeah,
here
Cisco.
names
Yeah,
were not jumbled up, and they were all
yeah.
Indians, and the Indians upper caste discriminated Indian lower caste. Okay,
Yes.
and in spite of the fact they're working in a the most competitive industry in the world,
Yeah.
how does this trade-offs work, efficiency versus
Yeah. Yeah, the Cisco example is definitely a really good one. I have my third project on the same example
okay.
and discovering on the same issue. So now what I'm discovering is if there is discrimination in task allocation. So at the stage of task allocation now, if you give a difficult task where you have more opportunities to learn to certain caste and some routine task to the other caste, then there is clearly over time there would be a clear difference in case of promotions, because the other caste, if and I think that's what happened in the Cisco example, was that the person who belonged to, I think, the non-upper caste was given really routine tasks. So he was a part of really important projects earlier, and then he was removed from them. He was given really routine tasks to work on, and then he said, yeah, based on this, I wouldn't be promoted further. And he was kind of isolated also because of this. So what I'll explore now is if there is discrimination right in the beginning now, in the task allocation stage, if you don't give relevant tasks to a certain caste, then of course, in the future, they will lag behind. So of course, it's not about efficiency here anymore. It's just clear discrimination based on your preference that you do. But now so my third project is what I explore now is, does it really happen?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I bring in that question which I was right to recollect also. Rather than clubbing non-upper caste as one category, does your result stay same if you take it as SC, ST, OBC?
Yeah, so yeah, we also did this part already. I think the general discriminated only against SC, and that too, I think the discrimination was really low. But yeah, otherwise there was nothing.
Because I do not understand why this has to be clubbed together. Particularly, you have taken efforts to put in this categorization, and there is always possibility of various groups having different biases against only particular groups.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. And that's why we did these 4 classification in the first stage itself, so that we don't, in the screen that they saw, it was SC, ST, general, OBC. But like one, we have little power because if we do this analysis based on the particular categories, second, we did not have any effects at all. I think one only, the general SC discrimination was somewhat, I think, significant at 5% or so to say, still low. Yeah. But yeah, it's so we in the paper, yeah, we have these particular classifications, the 4 categories. Yeah.
Have time for 1 or 2 questions maybe. Is there any other questions, comments? Okay, I think we've had reasonable amount of questions. Tirtha, you want to ask something?
Yeah, one small. I might have missed it, Deepthi. Sorry, I joined. I was not able to hear earlier. So the employers, are they all upper caste?
No, they belong to upper caste and non-upper caste both. Yeah.
So do you see any difference in the evaluation when the employers across the caste backgrounds of the employers, as in
Yeah, so
yeah.
even after we control for the caste, they do not discriminate. Overall, they do not discriminate. But in the first round, in the caste treatment, when they did not have the information about education, then they kind of preferred their own caste. And this was like both for the upper caste employers preferred their own in-group. So they preferred upper caste employees.
No,
And then
so at a later stage, sorry, at a later stage, you found that irrespective of the caste background of the upper caste, it does not really matter
yeah.
in the evaluation.
Over time, they both the castes, so the employers belonging to both upper caste and non-upper caste, they kind of tend to prefer the upper caste more. So they statistically discriminate then.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, Dipti, I think a good seminar means you get a lot of questions, comments, and discussions. I think by that criteria, this seminar was really, really fruitful. I think so for us at least. We got
for me as well.
Hopefully the same. Yeah. So thank you for that seminar, and thank you all for participating in the seminar. And when things get better, we hope to see you here sometime.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you everyone for your time and attention. And I'm really grateful for all the comments. This was the first time I was presenting to an Indian audience. And I was very much looking forward to the comments. So thank you so much.
So I'm closing the session now. Thank you all.
Thank you.